no Rashford, Maguire coming back in, and I would just say little surprised not to see Matic in there because I thought maybe he might be getting a game, but McFred alongside Bruno, I think
Yeah.
potentially a 4-2-3-1 again. Cavani had to come in because Ronaldo is not there, so no surprises there. I would say that Mabry is a good addition. I would say, even though it is coming off as a surprise, but I would say that most of the fans would be really happy to see him after his cameo against Liverpool. I think every United fan was dying to see more of him, and he didn't really get those minutes in the coming games. But
Yeah.
glad that he might potentially be getting a full 90 today. So I think it could be a perfect opportunity for him as well because Ten Hag is going to be watching this game pretty closely. So might earn, he might be able to earn some brownie points in front of him because he's a player from the youth system. Ten Hag is usually looking really really closely to the players who come off from the youth system. So Mabry I think could have a big game today. Plus, as I would say that this game. It is just potentially there to seal our Europa League fate because if West Ham are able to win today, they are going to take that Europa League spot and we're going to drop down to the Conference League because a goal difference is also not that great if I compare
Yeah.
it to West Ham's. So I would still say it's a big game considering we'll be really really active in this transfer window. So I think if we get a win, it could really really help us in that aspect. But other than that, I would just look into this game and enjoy these new young players to actually start their career at United, and hopefully it's one that they could actually remember.
Yeah. In regards to the bench, Reyes, I'll tell you the bench now. So we've got Heaton, Phil Jones, Varane, Bailly, Alvaro Fernandez, Mata, Shoretiri, or as Dan likes to call him, Shorty, Charlie Savage, and Alejandro Garnacho, who's Sam's is fanboy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got some youngsters on there. I imagine you're probably going to see him towards the end of the game, maybe last 20, 10, 15 minutes, something along the lines of that. I actually said to Sam when we was doing the preview for Crystal Palace that for some reason I've just got a feeling he's going to start Maguire because he's the captain. It's the last game of the season. I think it'll be some form of sentimental vibe, and it's come to fruition now. But I don't know what it was. I had a feeling something about that. But before we get into the rest of the lineup, and I'm going to ask you some questions as well, Shreyas. But today is a very important day. Marks the 5-year anniversary of the Manchester Arena attack. And I just want to say the 22 lives that were lost that day will always be remembered, and this beautiful city will carry their names for the foreseeable future. Absolutely heartbreaking what happened to everybody involved in that day, and I can't imagine what the families went through. So yeah, rest in peace. You will never be forgotten. And yeah, I think there was like a run today to kind of like commemorate the event. It was like a 12K run or something in Manchester. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because obviously it's a very important day to Mancunians and stuff. So yeah, now in the game itself, Shreyas, the team lineups are obviously out now. Let's dig into it. De Gea starting in net obviously isn't a massive surprise at all. I think we all anybody could have bet on that. Maguire, let's talk about Maguire because I'm sure if you go through our YouTube videos and stuff, there's so much reaction and so like reactionary things, should I say. There's so much emotion, so much kind of like, why is he still playing? What's going on? Even reports coming out now, City players were just like so confused as to why he kept starting, as we were as fans. Where do you go now if you're Harry Maguire?
I mean, out of this club, really, if I'm him, because he clearly doesn't meet the standards. And, with the kind of I said this before as well, if Pochettino had come in, I would still see Maguire here for a couple of more years. But now that Ten Hag has come in, I really don't see him to, be that starter for us that he has been, till this season. Because he definitely doesn't fit in his system. He isn't that. We've seen how clumsy he is with the ball as well now, and the way he gets bullied off players who have even this amount of pace, I would say. So if I am him, if I actually want to make a case for being in the World Cup as well, so
that's a good
I would
shout.
actually, so I would actually look out for some options at least, any Premier League club for that matter, because at United, he's not going to be getting minutes. And if he does stick with United and, the way he's performed this season, it's the same way next season. The first thing is he isn't going to be getting chances after chances after chances. So that's going to hurt his game time. And, the reports getting stronger about him getting stripped of the captaincy. That is also going to prove to be a big blow when it comes to, the shortlisting for the World Cup squad. Because at the moment, if you have to compare him to the, options that the England national team has in that centre back position, I don't think Maguire is better than any of those on the basis of form. So I think the World Cup could play a big part as well as to how he approaches this window. And except that I think he had to come into the team at some time. It was obvious that he would play in at least one of the games in the end. Either it had to be the Brentford one or this one. So
I feel like the club are pushing that though. Like the club, because obviously he was a valuable asset. They bought him broke a record for him for a centre back, £80 million. And I keep saying this on the show, but he's worth what, 25% of that now?
Yeah,
you'd probably say. So who realistically is going to buy him? Looking at him, from this season, like because if you're a scout or something and you're like, right, what kind of player do we need? Are you really going to look at Maguire's performances this season and be like, that's a solid guy you want to go and get? That's the guy.
I think,
do you know what I mean?
I think that, he could suit one of those clubs who actually play that slow football or in a slow league, I would say. I think if he went to a Serie A club, he could work well. Especially if he goes to Roma, because Mourinho has wanted him, for like forever when he was at United. And he didn't get him. So I still think that, if he is put up, for sale, a few clubs are going to be coming in for him. And if we are able to even generate like 20 to 25 million for him, I think it is still a big profit, because none of the top 6 clubs are going to be coming in for him. That's obvious. So even if, somebody like a Wolves come in, or potentially anyone, and they still want to splash around like 20 to 25 million, I would, take it no brainer. Because it's, the Timber deal is almost completed, I would say, the way the things are going about in that aspect. Varane is still
going
here.
Down.
Yeah.
It's Joey and Timber.
And Varane is staying. And Lindelof is staying as well, which is obvious. So that's 3 centre-backs already. How does Harry Maguire pull himself, up those rankings in comparison to them? Because Timber is definitely going to get some game time. He's one of those players who's Ten Hag is potentially developed, from
in a Ten Hag system as well, Shreyas. Like
exactly.
I can't see Maguire fitting in that in any facet. I really can't.
So he is going to be struggling for game time, and I still, if he does stay at United, I do think that he's not going to be featuring in the World Cup, because if he has to feature in the World Cup, he has to, get some game time somewhere. That's one of the reasons why Dean Henderson is also looking to move as well, because he wants to play there, and he knows that if he wants to, make a potential chance for himself, he has to leave Manchester United. And I think the same goes for him as well.
Sorry, I was just going to say, this might be a bit controversial, but I actually think Maguire, if you was to put him in Chelsea's team, he played with that back 5. I think he'd look a lot more comfortable, say, alongside, say you take Thiago Silva out, right? He was obviously a very good experienced player. He's been, at top clubs in the world, AC Milan, PSG. But you put Harry Maguire in there with I know Rudiger's going to Madrid, but I'm speaking like strictly this year. You put him alongside Rudiger and maybe an Aspilicueta or Christensen.
Even I would say even Christensen. Christensen, if those guys are alongside him.
I think if you put him there, give him that protection with the centre backs who are relatively quick, and he could just sort of, command in the middle. I don't think he'd look half as bad as he has for us. And I think the reason why he looks so good for England is, one, because the international football is slightly different, slightly slower tempo, I'd say. And the England setup suits him a lot more. He's more protected in that, as we know, because England aren't, the attacking players that they've got, they don't play a very attacking system.
I think when you see those international squads and you take a look at the England squad right now, I think they're blessed with talent when it comes to, their attacking options. You've got Sancho, Harry Kane in his prime as well. You've got loads of players, when it comes to, the attacking aspect. But Southgate does prefer that kind of football. I would say it's pretty much similar to Ollie's as well, where the centre backs are really, really guarded.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that works for him in that England setup is that the defensive midfielders that England have got, with Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips as well, it does provide him that cover, which he doesn't really get at United with McTominay and Fred. So it does eliminate a lot of his, potential factors that could influence the game. But it still hurts the England squad as a whole unit, because they aren't really, able to play to their full potential. Because you look at, the squad and the kind of players, even the youngsters like Saka coming in, Smith Rowe coming in, and you would say, that even if these guys, play even the youngsters in the World Cup, you could still say that you are easily going to make it to the semi-finals. That's how good they are. So I think the World Cup is going to pose a real, a real threat to Harry Maguire. So if
I still think he'll go though, Shreyas. I don't know why. I just think like England. I think, like for example, you look at Jordan Pickford for Everton, right? He's not amazing for Everton. My friend who's an Everton fan might disagree, but I don't think he's as good as Everton as he is for England. And then you look at Maguire for England, he's really good. But then for Manchester United, like I think the club form and national form are completely different. Like Maguire's had a stinker this year, but he's done good for England. So I actually think he will go to the World Cup. And I actually think because of the centre-back options that are there, we're not blessed with loads of like really good centre-backs. So you've got John Stones, Connor Cody, Harry Maguire, like Tyrone Mings as well.
Tyrone Mings,
Yeah, I know Tomori's really good at AC Milan. He should definitely get a shout. But if we're being realistic, I think Southgate's probably going to pick Maguire in it. But it's not based off how he's done the season. It's based off how he's done for England.
I get what you're saying, and I agree to that as well. But I would still say that for that to happen as well, I still think that he's going to need game time to, actually be at the races as well. Because even if Southgate wants to actually take him, he has to, look whether he's getting game time for the club or not. That's one of the factors why, I would say that Jesse Lingard wasn't even, taken during the Euros, because even though he was, playing really, really good for West Ham, he hadn't really played football for a major part of that year. So I get what you're saying, but even Pickford, he gets a lot of game time at Everton. And, he isn't that great for them, but for England, he does turn up. Even in those penalties against Italy in the final, he was amazing. Saving that from Joy, he was amazing in that. So, but I still think that for the club, I really don't see a bright future for him if he does stay at United. If I am him, I would actually be looking at my options right about now, because he knows the attitude of Ten Hag as well. He knows that Ten Hag is going to be ruthless. He knows that Rangnick is going to be going upstairs. So he's going to be having, I would say, no person, to play favoritism for him, which used to happen under Ollie's command, where, you would see the same names week in and week out, no matter how they used to perform on the pitch. So I really don't see a bright future for him. Plus with the player like Timber coming in, if a player would not have come from Ajax and from a different club, I would still say that, he could have made a case for himself. But, when you've got a player who's learned of the same manager in a different club,
he's just going to settle straight in it.
That's one of the reasons why every United fan, deep down, they know that Donny van de Beek is also going to be getting game time under Ten Hag, because he's one of those players that has actually flourished a lot under Ten Hag, made him one of the best prospects in the midfield in Europe when we got him. And, if we potentially do get Frankie de Jong as well, which is still up in the air right now, these are the players which you would instantly go and say they are going to be in the team sheet. If they do not perform well, maybe in the coming weeks, they would not be in the squad. But if I would say, the first 3 or 4 games, these are going to be the players that are going to be in there for sure.
Yeah. And I was saying on my TikTok live about Donny, I said, oh yeah, follow our TikTok, by the way, if you aren't already, Real Red Talk. But yeah, when I was doing the live, I was saying with Donny van de Beek, I think he will be in that system, the Ten Hag system that he's going to play, obviously. But I think it will be like a process. I think when he comes in, he'll have the preseason. I don't think he's going to go in straight away. I think he'll
Yeah,
tinker with it, a few options like here and there, depending on who he brings in as well. Don't forget, I don't know what kind of midfielder he's
exactly.
going to find. But I think if I was to have like a gun to my head, I think by December, I think he will be on the team. But we'll get into the midfield a little bit later on, Trey, as I want to stick with the defence at the moment.
Yeah,
And go on to his centre-back partner, Victor Lindelof. How do you rate his season this year? How do you think he's done?
I think if we have to, judge him by the kind of season he's had, I would still say, he's by far been our most consistent centre back because he's been there week in and week out. The only reason he actually lost his spot for a brief interval, I would say, is just because his house got robbed. Yeah. And we still remember that how Maguire was getting chance after chance after chance after that. So, and except that, I think he's one of those players who hasn't really struggled with that much with injuries either. He's been there filling up for Varane as well when he was injured in the big games as well. Even when against Atletico, when he played off that right on that right back position, as crazy as it was, he was playing well there. He didn't really make any massive mistakes there. He did his role, and I actually see him. He could be one of those players that might actually surprise us when Ten Hag comes in, because if he has that long ball in him as well, so his passing ability is much better than Maguire's, and when it comes to making those clean interceptions, he's really great at that. So I think out of the three centre backs that have featured for us for major part of the season, I think Lindelof has been the most consistent and stable one, because even though Varane, as good as he's been when he's been there for us, Lindelof, I think, has got more appearances than him throughout this season. Yeah. So I think he's one of those players who's really reliable, even when you have to, count him in for the big games. Even when, we went in for the back five, he was there. Even when we were playing against, big sides like Liverpool, Chelsea, you've seen Lindelof being there. So I rate him, and I really want him to actually succeed as well, because we've seen that he's devoted to the club. He's one of those players who goes about his business on the pitch as well, and he's proven, I would say that he has proven himself under Ragnick as well. I think the players, the way that they've reacted to Ragnick coming in and the kind of leaks and news that we've seen coming out, I would still say that Dalot has impressed a lot. And if I have to, rate someone alongside him in the defensive lineup, I would say it has to be Victor Lindelof.
Absolutely. I think if you compare it to how we did last season under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I thought it looked really bad alongside him, and Maguire were like dumber and dumber. But this season, he's stepped up a level. Obviously, our defensive record isn't great, so he is a part of that naturally. We haven't got a lot of clean sheets and stuff like that. So maybe he could have done better in that department, but individually, I think he's done okay. I'm actually excited to see how he does under Ten Hag, because I think he's going to suit the way Ten Hag kind of plays. It depends who goes alongside him. I don't know what's going to happen with Timber if he comes straight in and then he's Lindelof's partner or Varane's partner. What's going to happen with Rafa Varane? It's interesting to see how he's going to kind of mix it up and who's going to be our dominant partnership next year, because that's another thing we can talk about, individual players all we want, but when you look at partnerships, that's the real solid foundation of your team. Like guys who are playing together consistently. You look at Van Dijk and Matip. You look at Laporte and Diaz. You go back in the day, look at Rio and Vidic, Carvalho and Terry. All these guys have played, loads and loads and loads of games with each other. They know the games inside out. You can't guess our centre-back partnership between each game. Like I couldn't have guessed. Well, I guessed that it was Maguire would start. But I thought it might have been Maguire and Varane or Maguire. Like you just never know. It could be Lindelof, Varane, Maguire, Maguire, Varane. You just never ever know. So you can't have that consistency in the partnership. And I think that's been the major issue. So when Ten Hag comes in, if he can sort that out, which will be hard because we know what Varane's like with his injury issues. Every 3-4 weeks, the guy's out for like 2 weeks or he misses a few games. So naturally, then you got to replace him. So it'd be interesting to see. Maybe we'll go with like Timber and Lindelof, because at least Lindelof can stay fit. He's consistent and he's a good ball playing centre back. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with them. Wing backs, what do you think is going to... Because that's another area where I'm looking at Shreyas and I'm thinking we need another player in each position. We need another left back, I think. And we need another right back, maybe to kind of compete with Diego Dallo.
Yeah. Right now, I would say in that wing back position, I'm not going to count Wan-Bissaka as of now because there's loads of rumors that he's going to be leaving. So let's just count him out for the time being. And so I would say Dallo. I think Dallo is going to be here. I think he has to upgrade his game when it comes to his positional sense while defending, because when he's attacking, he's one of the best at the club. And he has actually, put in some incredible performances under Rangnick. I think he's one of those players who was able to make really, really great, a really great opportunity out of the chances that were given to him under Rangnick, and he made himself a starter. And even when Wan-Bissaka, he started to get games, I still remember, I think it was Leeds when suddenly he was dropped to the bench and Wan-Bissaka was getting a few games, and all of us were wondering why, because he was playing really, really well. So I think Dallo is going to be here, and under Ten Hag, he could work really, really well. But when it comes to that left-hand side, I think there's a lot of question marks, because when you look at Telles...
Sorry, just one second. Continue, Shreyas. Let me just mute your mic a sec.
Because when you look at Alex Telles, the way that he's performed under, the conditions that have, come out of the club because of Luke Shaw getting injured, being out for the season, he hasn't made a case for himself where I would say he deserves to, start week in and week out. Him and Luke Shaw, I would, as this season, if I have to just count this season, I would say that both of them have been performing to a similar level. But still, defensively, I still think that Luke Shaw is a much better option, because we've seen Telles, get absolutely humbled by players like Mahrez when we were against. Yeah. I mean, it gave us a lot of, a lot of scares when we, used to see a team sheet, especially against Liverpool as well. So I think Telles is good when it comes to, having like a backup option. Just, a second left back, you can just pull in when the first starting one is knackered, or, it's just a cup game. I think he's a good option for that. But as a first choice, I would still, I still understand that people want to give Luke Shaw a second chance, and I would say he deserves it as well after the campaign that he had last season. But I still think, there could be a big... I'm not going to be surprised if he actually goes in for a wing back after getting a centre back, because he relies on wing backs a lot. The stats that the wing backs at Ajax pull out, like Mazraoui, it's insane. So I think he's going to be looking at that. Ten Hag is going to be looking at that very closely. So I think Telles could be going out. I mean, I think there's still a lot of speculation in that aspect, but I think Telles, he's good for having like a backup option. But for the first choice, I really, really want Luke Shaw to step up, show us the levels that he, showed us last season. I think that's the perfect case for us, because we all know that, he's one of those players who, if he, performs to his full capability, he's one of the best in Europe. We've seen that, how good he's been. He had a great Euros campaign as well. So I think he does deserve one more season, Luke Shaw. But if he doesn't, I think I would say the first spot which needs to be filled has to be the wing backs, because Ten Hag relies a lot on those overloads and that are created by his wing backs, and for the wing backs to complement the wingers as well. Those relationships really need to work out.
Yeah, that's another partnership that you need in it, like consistency in them. It always goes back to, you look at the teams that are like killing it at the minute. Unfortunately, City, Liverpool, them kind of guys.
Yeah.
They always have Trent, Salah, Robertson, and Mane 9 times out of 10. Do you know what I mean? Like, they know the game inside out, and that's a theme that we need throughout the full team. Moving on to the midfield, Shreyas. Our midfield today, I've completely forgot it. It is
McTominay, Fred, and Bruno.
Yeah, so McFred and Fernandes. How do you feel about Fernandes? Because obviously the past few games he's been playing left wing, and he's looked okay there, but now he's been dropped back into that kind of 8 role, which I was a fan of at the start, but the more I watched him then, the more I'm like, I don't like it. I like him closer to their goal as a 10 or as a winger. how do you feel about that midfield of McFred and Bruno?
I think,
Also,
coming to Bruno
sorry, just
first.
before you think, Ten Hag just arrived at Selhurst Park. Apparently, I've just seen a picture on Twitter saying the boss has arrived. So interesting, but yeah, continue, go on.
Yeah. Firstly, coming to Bruno, I would say, when he came in, he instantly became one of my favorite players, because it was after a really, really long time, that I actually saw a midfielder in our club who could, be that catalyst for every other player. Because, when he came in, he actually elevated the levels of the other players around him as well. You could see Martial getting a big boost. You could see Rashford linking up pretty well with him. Even, when Greenwood was here, he actually elevated a level up as well. And even Pogba, the kind of impact that we actually wanted of a player that we went out for 90 million, Bruno came in and did that for us. So I think when he came in, the half season that he was in, he really impressed me a lot. In the next season, I think he became one of our main men, pulled off insane numbers, broke off records for goal scoring from that midfield spot as well. So, but this season, I would say, I think the locker room is a terrible mess at the moment. But I think that he's one of the players who's facing the brunt of it the most, because we see that in games. He's, I think, in the top two when it comes to losing out on the ball during possession and build up, like 210 or 212 times. So that's a big worry, because he's one of those players who we want to be on, who we want that, he has to be on the ball. He's one of our most creative outlets. So, but the way that he, goes for that killer pass every time he has that ball, I think it could come off, because, there aren't that many opportunities for us in a game, but it does cost us a lot, because the instant that he, loses that ball, we get hit on the counter attack, and we've conceded a lot of goals because of it. So he is one of my favorite players, but there has been a downgrade this season. Definitely. I know that, his stats this season are really great as well. When you have to compare it with players like Bernardo Silva, when you just compare it, like, like chances created, he's at the top. When you look at, open goal opportunities created by a player, he's over there as well. So I would, say that even though he's not having that great of a season, the stats that he has pulled out in the Champions League as well, the number of assists that he got us, I still think that his level is there. If, he's able to pull this off when he's not having a good season.
Yeah.
Just imagine, when he's hitting his peak performances, how good he can be for us. And that's why I actually want him to step up when Ten Hag comes in, because we know that he needs a number 10 in his system. So, and right now, I would say the player which is, potentially going to seal that number 10 spot for next season is going to be Bruno Fernandes, because he's renewed his contract as well. So he's going to be here for a while. And except Bruno, we don't really have that number 10 in the club at the moment. You could say that, Sancho could play off there, or any other, Donny could play off there, but those aren't their designated spots. When it comes to Donny, he's more of a number 6. When it comes to Sancho, he's more of a left winger. So I would say Bruno is going to be there next season, and I hope that he actually steps up and shows us what he's truly capable of. And except that, when it comes to McFred, I think when we were on the tier list with Sam and Adam, we were actually having a hard time, trying to pick one of them to actually, one as a squad player and one to actually sell, because
my squad player is Fred all day.
Yeah. That's who we went for as well, because when I compared both of them, the only aspect where I would say McTominay beats Fred is passion, because we've seen how passionate he is during the game.
I don't even know in that, I think I disagree with that. I think Fred is like hot on the collar a lot of the times, like whenever it's kicking off or anything like that. I think the only thing McTominay beats him for me personally is like physicality, height.
Yeah, could be the case.
Stuff like that. But I think everything else, Fred's, probably edges him for me personally.
But I still think, even in the physical games, because we've seen Fred against Leeds as well, and he's been really, really good in those games. So I think in those physical battles like Burnley and Leeds, I actually, give the edge to Fred rather than McTominay, because Fred is much more agile when you have to compare it to McTominay. He's running around, he's got loads of energy. But McTominay, I think he's one of those players, he has his designated path in a pitch. You could see when you look at Fred, he's almost, at every end of the pitch, at the back, at the front as well, when we're playing well and he's involved in the game. Especially, when we saw that against Atletico Madrid in the first half of the second leg. He was playing amazingly well, and you could see him everywhere on the pitch, whether it's around the Atletico box, our box, even in the midfield. He was really, really dominant there.
Yeah, he was.
But McTominay, when you've seen McTominay, he's either on the edge of our box or he's just floating around in the midfield. He's not really one of those players who's going to be floating around the pitch that much. So
maybe a DM could unlock him. Like, I know I'm not saying that's. Look, for me personally, I put him a squad player at best. And I'd bring in some quality players like a Frankie de Jong or someone like that. Obviously, I'd rather have them in the midfield. But as a squad player, I don't mind him at all. I just think he's been being played at like a 6, and we know he isn't a 6. We know he's an 8. But then when he is an 8, he's never had the proper, like a Tchouameni type or Kante next to him. Where he doesn't have to necessarily worry about, the legs in midfield. Because obviously when Matic plays there, he's disciplined, he knows the role, but when it comes to physicality in that role, he doesn't fulfill the full kind of assignment. Do you know what I mean? So I think with a proper DM there, you never know what can happen. I'm just saying, like, you look into the future now with Ten Hag, you don't know what players are going to be there, because I thought before Rangnick came in, I thought McTominay would be gone straight away. I thought he wouldn't be in that system at all. And then he was kind of like one of his go-to players. So it just goes to show you never really know what the manager's thinking.
And that's why when Rangnick actually came out and said, he actually mentioned Luke Shaw and Scott McTominay being one of the, most adaptable players in that setup that he got. So, but, I would still say, with Ten Hag coming in, I would still say that Fred's passing range is much, much better than McTominay's, because we are still going to be banking on a 4-2-3-1 next season. So in those two slots, in the midfield trio, I would say Bruno is definitely going to be there. So in the remaining 2 slots, Donny is there. So that there's just 1 slot left. So if we get Frankie de Jong, will it be him? If we go for someone else, will it be that guy? We've got James Garner, who's going to be sticking around in the club as well. Then we've got Fred, and then we've got McTominay. So when I look into it that way, I would, still want a person like Garner getting much, more game time than McTominay. And I know that McTominay isn't one of those players who's, just going to be satisfied with a job, getting like 10 to 12 games a season. So I really don't see him as a player who's going to be sticking around, because I still see Fred getting a lot of games, because we are going to be needing energy in that midfield. So Fred might help us, amplify energy when we kind of slip off or start fading. So I think Fred could be key, but I don't see McTominay being one of those players. And I would personally want the youth players coming through our system to actually, get game time rather than players like McTominay, soaking game time for them.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned young players there, because you look at our attacking line today, Shreyas. We've got Elanga on the wing, who's going to be back on the left-hand side, I imagine, because there's no Jadon Sancho. I don't know what's going on with Jadon Sancho. I thought he was back in training.
He was back in training, but, might not be
might not
full
be
fitness because of tonsillitis.
Which is a shame, because it would have been nice to see him, because he's, I think if you do like a category, you do like De Gea, Ronaldo, and then Sancho's just below that, because he had a very slow start to the season, but then since then he's been a very creative kind of flair player on that wing who's been relatively reliable. So I'd put him just sort of like a tier below.
Definitely.
De Gea and Ronaldo in that sense. So it's a shame not to see him, but we have got Elanga there back there on the left-hand side, so that might be his preferred side. I think he looks better there, in my personal opinion. It's just because we haven't got an out-and-out right winger. We've had to play Rashford or Elanga there at times. But we've got Hannibal Mabry as well starting. So it could even be a midfield of McFred and Mabry, and then Bruno back on the left, Elanga on the right. Like you never know, because obviously they can always come out with a graphic, and people look at the graphic and then they just assume that's how they're going to play. But a lot of the times, especially with Manchester United, they get the graphic wrong and the players are in completely different positions. So
plus,
how do you see
Rangnick that? With Rangnick as well, you never know which player is playing in which position.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It leads me to my next question. How do you see that front three kind of working, like in your mind? How do you see it planning out?
I mean, Elanga is definitely going to be on the wings, because, when we've seen lineups similar to this, we've, seen that Elanga is always playing off the wing. So I think that Elanga is going to be there on the right wing. Cavani is obviously going to play in that striker position, and on the left, I think that Mabry could be used as one of those as an eight. But if I look at the squad, I would still fancy him playing off the wing rather than as an eight, because Bruno, I don't see this game where I would want Mabry to be be in that eight spot, because we're not playing Mata. So I would actually if we go with the 4-2-3-1, then I think that Bruno is going to be at 10. But if it's a 4-3-3, I still see that Bruno is going to be an 8.
Yeah, I agree. Going to be interesting to see when the game actually starts, to see how they sort of set up and stuff. Was there any young players in particular you wanted to see in today's game, Shreyas?
I think Garnacho, because we still actually, when I see Mabry, as we still seen bits from him, but in the Liverpool game. But Garnacho, I think he potentially got like just a couple of minutes against Chelsea in during the extra time, but he still hasn't got, I would say, that experience with the squad where even we as fans could say that this kid, he's going to be something. Like people have come out and said about Mabry that this kid cares, that he's one of those players who's going to be one of the brightest prospects that we've actually got from the youth system in quite some time. So I think Garnacho could be a decent shout. It still depends on how Ragnick is taking this game and how we perform as well, because it's we won 3-0 against Brentford, then we collapsed against Brighton. So it's a mixed bag when you have to speculate about
this.
That's
an understatement, to say the least. Like,
yeah.
I'm just watching the Brighton goals back now. They're just showing it on TV. I'm just thinking, my God.
I mean, you can never predict anything with us, and we still don't know how Ragnick is approaching this game either. There's a lot of questions about it. If he actually is,
after the game, you know what he's been like in his press conferences? He's been like openly honest. Maybe after the game, he's just going to pull out a list, whip it out of his back pocket, and he's going to be like, right, this is everything that's fucking wrong with the club. This is what the players are doing. This is what the coaching staff are doing wrong. This is what everybody's doing wrong. And he just holds it up to the camera, and it's all in clear block lettering, so you can read it. And it's just basically slating every single player, because I feel like
I really want him to, still do interviews for us even when Ten Hag comes in.
Yeah, he must be dying to do it, because you've seen him, and when he gets asked a question, he's just like, well, I don't know. I don't know what Darren Fletcher's doing there.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what kind of coaches are doing. I don't know what players are like. He's just kind of been thrown right under a bus, really, for these past 6 months. And that was actually my next question on Ralph Rangnick Shreyas. How would you assess his time in charge? How much percentage would you say is on the players, and how much percentage would you say is on Ralph?
I would say, in a couple of games, I would say that it could be on Ralph, but we know how the board presses any manager that comes in for us. Pushing players on managers who they actually don't really want to play. So I would still say like 20% has to be on Ralph's head as well. The way he used Maguire in certain games, and the way he dropped Dalot out of the blue, and when Lindelof being played at right back, a couple of his decisions,
that one. So that was one of the worst ones against Atletico.
So I think 20% is going to be on him, but 80% is definitely on the players, because we've seen their attitudes. Most of them aren't really ready to come out of their comfort zones, putting the work in, developing, adapting to new systems that, actually the big teams in our in the Premier League right now are using. Even if you have to look at Brighton, those players, they're system players. They have adapted to the mentality of Graham Potter, and the way that they've performed this season is superb. So, and it's, if I have, especially like players like Rashford, the way that they've come out in the brief time that Ralph's been here, they demand game time, but
that's a joke, that, isn't it?
What reason? Yeah. So
what a joke that is.
Yeah. So I think 80% definitely has to be on the players, especially.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry. Especially, I would say, the way things have come out with Ronaldo as well. the season that he's had, the homecoming season. And
who,
I would
by
say,
the way, sorry to interrupt you there, Shreyas,
yeah,
didn't get nominated for a Player of the Year award. What, like, let's just talk about that, right? Let's just hit, hit that straight on the head. What's going on there?
He scored back-to-back hat tricks at Old Trafford. 18 goals as well this season in this United squad. Still third on that list when it comes to the Golden Boot. And except that, the way that he's been involved in pressing and build-up play, the way his consistency, and being nominated for the Player of the Month on an awful lot of occasions and winning it a couple of times as well. So
won it more than anyone. Won more Player of the Month awards than anyone.
So I really don't understand how any other player makes a case for himself in that striking position than Ronaldo, because he's
at 37 years old as well. What player is coming back to the Premier League at that age, putting in the numbers he's done? And not only just that, I know it's a vote for Premier League Player of the Year, but think about what he's done in the Champions League, the clutch moments he's had in there. Like, how have you put Ward-Prowse and Saka, who, in their respective teams, they've done well. But what Ronaldo's done in this shit United team to get them numbers is ridiculous. 20 plus in all comps, it's mad.
Absolutely. Because, when you have to, look at that Team of the Year squad, you have to, see at those players and, just say that these are the best players and there's nobody who, reaches their level. And when you have to talk about Mo Salah, hands down, he's one of the best wingers in the league. When you have to, talk about Son as well, I think Son is one of the best wingers I've actually seen coming off. And, I think he's one of those players that, whenever you see him, you see that United player in him. The way he runs at players, the way he dribbles, he's not afraid to, run with the ball. You just see a United player in there. And that's why I think he's also one of the best wingers in the league. But when you look at the striking department, I really don't see anyone better than Ronaldo. Even at this age, in this era, I would say he's one of the best. I think he's
been the best striker in the Prem this season, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Would you say?
I mean,
him and Kane, maybe.
Kane.
Because I know Kane's goal involvement is right up there. But you're talking about an out-and-out striker. And Kane, I know Tottenham have had their issues, but you look at their attack, Kuleski, Son, to feed him. Cristiano Ronaldo is, in my opinion.
Even to speak about Kane did actually, kick on when Conte came in, and the business end of the season. That's when he actually kicked on. Ronaldo was pulling in performances before that as well. Yeah, exactly. He had a blip, but even in that blip, he was able to, get a couple of goals there as well. So as a whole season, I would still say Ronaldo is there. And even if someone has to, compete for that, there is Kane. But who else? I don't see anyone in Liverpool actually battling it out in the striking position. When you have to look at City, they don't really have a striker, and even their false nine keeps on changing. Whether sometimes it's De Bruyne, sometimes it's Foden, then it's Bernardo Silva, then it's Mahrez, Sterling.
Anyone can slot in there.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no one, and Lukaku is definitely not there. So, yeah.
Lukaku, oh God. He's going to go back to Italy, isn't he? Surely. I hope so anyway, because he's bottled it in the Prem. Just for bringing it back a bit to today's game, Shreyas, I'm just looking at Palace's team because we haven't gone through that. I've just realised. So they've got Gaeta in net, Spanish keeper. They've got Ward, Klein, Schlupp, Anderson, Mitchell. No Gay, who's been really good for them at centre back. He was Anderson's partner.
All right.
So he's not starting. But you've got Zaha, Will Hughes, Gallagher, Rak Saki, I think. I've never heard of him, I have to be honest. And Edward up front. So, what kind of threats do you think Palace are going to pose today?
I think Zaha this season has been really good for them. He's one of those
13 goals.
Yeah. I think he's always been one of the brightest sparks in that Crystal Palace team. And I think except that as well, Conor Gallagher has been really, really good for them, coming in as
he's
a
not
loan player
staying
from
there,
Chelsea. Yeah, he's going to go back to Chelsea. And I think Chelsea are also, in the hunt for that midfielder, because the way Conte has actually, degraded the season, I would say they're definitely in the hunt for that central midfielder. So he's definitely going back to Chelsea. But right? As of this season, I think in Palace he's done really, really well. So he's going to be a threat. And except that, I think Edward could be a threat as well, because I think when you look at that squad and the kind of options that they've got, when you look at that in their attacking side, I think Zaha and Edward are the only ones which I would say, they could pose a really good threat, especially Zaha. With his pace, and Maguire is playing as well. So no matter who's at striker, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
so
exactly. But look, the thing is with Patrick Vieira, right? So when he was under Roy Hodgson, I thought it was a very boring, guessable team. You knew exactly what he was going to do. They kind of set up with 2 banks of 4 and a bank of 2, or like a 1-1 that with a striker behind him, and just kind of like drew games. That's kind of how I felt Palace would be. But under Patrick Vieira, they've got this like freshness about it, and they've brought in a lot of young players. You've got that Eze, who's a talented player. Zaha's not a young player, he's 29, but he mixes in, he blends in with these guys who are going forward. Conor Gallagher is obviously coming in, you mentioned then. Similar to Frank Lampard in the way he plays, that kind of box-to-box role. They've got young defenders there. A lot of the young British talent, the left-back Mitchell's done really well for him as well. So yeah, I actually like the direction that Palace are going in. I agree with Sam when he was doing the preview, the other day, he was saying, the direction they look like they're going in. Vieira's done a good job there. With that being said, the game they had against Everton, I don't know if you watched it. It was just mental, absolutely mental. The fans running on the pitch, like jumping on people before the game was even over. There weren't any cutlery there. There was no pans and stuff. But the guys were running on, slapping the air and shit, just going wild, absolutely wild. I know, obviously, they're passionate. They've just managed to stay up. But Palace did bottle that game.
Yeah.
They did bottle it because it was 2-0 up. I was looking at halftime on a certain betting website, and I was looking at Everton odds, and it was like 10-1. And I was like, I fancy them to get this comeback. I think they're going to do it. I said it to my girlfriend at the time. Didn't put it on, and then what did he go and do? They ended up going to win. I felt it in that ground. You could just Goodison Park is an absolute cauldron, but they did bottle that game, Shreya. So, are you expecting a tough game today? Do you think they're kind of already on holiday, or what do you think?
I mean, once again, I'm going to stick by my statement. You can never predict anything with us. I think it's right now the situation that there is, and we're playing without Ronaldo as well. So I would say we'll either have a really, really good game or we'll have a terrible game. So there's only 2 sides to this, another 3-0 or 4-0 kind of situation, or, we win 2-1, 3-1. That's the only way I see this game, panning out.
I bet the players are dying to just end the season out there. I bet they're just like, I cannot wait to go on fucking holiday. I bet all of them are. You know what? Funnily enough, you mentioned, because we haven't got Ronaldo today, I completely forgot Cavani's starting. And we've not even spoke about Cavani.
Is this his first full-time start under Ragnick?
Yeah, so he must have recovered from the misplaced hair that he had. God bless his soul. So Cavani's starting. What do we say about Cavani now? Because we know the first season, he was great. He was kind of like a cult legend. He'd come in and do cameos, and he looked really good. He'd score goals. This season, he's just kind of like, it seemed like he was pissed off. Me and Sam obviously had the back and forth. I don't know if he was it after the Brentford game?
I was sitting like this.
Yeah. If he was a GIF, he's going to make a GIF out of that. But yeah, so me and Sam were going back and forth, and I felt like he felt disrespected because Ronaldo came in, because he wanted to go back to South America, but he said to United, look, I'm staying. I'll stay if you need me. And he was like, right, cool. And then went and got Cristiano Ronaldo, made him the main striker. So he was kind of pissed off by that. And then you just haven't really seen him at all this season. He's been out for like 15 games, and then he plays 1, and then he's out for another 15.
I would still say, the way the situation actually, came out about for us, the way first Ragnick came in and went for the 4-2-2. I think if Cavani would have been available, in that time space, it could have worked out between him and Ronaldo. But he was injured. He wasn't there. We went back to a single striker formation, a 4-3-3. And at first, he just had one competition for that striking department, and that was Anthony Martial. So that was the only competition he potentially had. And then Ronaldo came in. So that he's going to start over you. And even after that, we saw Mason Greenwood actually getting games as a striker as well on a lot of occasions. So I think in that way you could say that it was a bit hard. It was a bit unjustified for him to actually stay when Oli actually promised a lot of these players to get game time. So I would still say in that aspect it was a bit unjustified, but still, you even when he had that opportunity to actually come in, because like I mentioned earlier, Ronaldo had that blip, and we were looking at players to actually come off from the bench, or potentially to even start games for us, and Cavani wasn't there. So I think it would be in the best interest for both the club as well as the player to actually just end this negotiation, and for him to actually go to Spain, or if South America it is, wherever it is. I think he should just leave, because what he did for us in his first season, I think it was magnificent. I think he was one of the first players to actually end that number 7 jersey curse as well. So I think I think he has had a good time, and let's just keep it respectful and let him leave with that.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm listening. I've just completely remembered I've got to do my transfers for my I team, and I've got 5 minutes to do them. So I'm kind of like skimming through all the games now, and I'm like, shit, who should I transfer in? But yeah, you know what? We'll go through that, because I wanted to do it before the game kind of kicks off.
How much time is left?
5 minutes before the game kicks off.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah, obviously there's a lot at stake today in the Premier League. You've got the Premier League title, 1 point between both teams. Man City at home against Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa. You've got Liverpool away at Molineux to Wolves. So yeah, that's going to be interesting what happens there. You've got the fight for 4th place between Arsenal and Spurs. Arsenal have Everton at home, who have recently just secured Premier League safety. Spurs have Norwich away, who, let's be honest, are already on holiday and will probably win about 6-0. United and West Ham fighting out for Europa League or Conference League, and then you've got Leeds or Burnley, who will be joining the relegated teams Watford and Norwich to go down. Leeds have Brentford away, and Burnley have Newcastle at Turf Moor, so they're at home. What do you think, Shreyas? How all your predictions for them now? So who's going to get relegated? Who's going to get Europa? Who's going to get top 4? And who's going to win the Prem? Just whilst I do my transfers.
I want Man City to win the Prem for obvious reasons.
I think we all do, don't we?
Yeah, we all do. I hate that their last game has to be against the Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa. So I still see Man City winning the league. For Europa, I think West Ham might edge it.
You think we're going to end up in the Conference League?
Wow. I think we could. They were really good against Man City. They're on a hot streak of momentum right now as well. So I think West Ham could edge Europa League, and we might drop down to the Conference League. And I think, keeping history in mind as well, I think Burnley are going to survive once more.
Wow, you've gone for the opposite of my predictions.
Yeah. I mean, when we first did this conversation, about teams getting relegated, I still mentioned, that Burnley, they still might do something crazy, and, they might still, might be able to fight for survival. And that's how they've gone about it, because a couple of games back, the scene was completely different for us as well as for them. So I still, see Leeds getting relegated, because Newcastle, I would still say, they're still beatable. And
good team though, they have done well.
But still, the way that Leeds are, and their injury struggles and the way they performed as well, I still see them actually facing the relegation.
Okay, so very quickly go through them, because I know you said City. So City to win the league. Who did you say for top 4 again?
I said Tottenham.
Tottenham to get top 4. You think West Ham will get Europa?
West Ham. I mean, who wants? I don't really think anyone wants Arsenal to get top 4.
Yeah. So I think we're in agreement on that. I want City to win it over Liverpool. I want Tottenham to get it over Arsenal. I obviously want United to get it over West Ham. And you think Leeds are going to go down? Did you say?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to go with mine. I'll say. Oh, you know what? I actually think the City game against Villa is going to be a tricky.
Yeah,
I think Steven Gerrard's just going to be proper up for it, and I think he's going to be try and make it as awkward as he can. So I think City will just do it 2-1. I don't think they'll batter Villa. I think it'll be a tough game. I think Tottenham will get it, obviously away at Norwich. I think they'll batter Norwich. With us, Oh man, it's so hard. Isn't it? It's so hard to guess because
you can't really predict it. You can't predict it.
You can't. You really can't.
Yeah.
I say we'll do it. I think we'll do it. We won't do it comfortably. We won't win 3, 4, 5-0 or whatever. Obviously. If we're gonna do it, it'll be the hard way. I think we all know that. So I think I'll go with United for Europa, West Ham to end up in the conference. That's so depressing. And I think who are Leeds have Brentford away? Oh, it's a tough game, that.
Yeah.
I think Leeds will stay up. And I'll go with Burnley to go down.
Burnley. To be really honest, if it would have been anyone else than Brentford, I would, still have said that, Leeds could do it. But just, Brentford, the way that they've been this season.
They have been good.
Yeah, they have been good. They've got good players as well.
I'm just looking at how many points are between Burnley and thingy now. So they're both on level points. So I think Newcastle will either beat them. I think Newcastle will beat them and Leeds will get a draw. That's what I'm going to go with. Kickoff is starting right now. We was initially planning on doing a watch along, but because of streaming issues, and how it's going to affect our stream, we only want top quality streaming, so it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to sort that out. But we are going to be back for post match analysis with me, Shreyas, and Sam, I believe. So that'd be interesting, and we're also going to discuss to break down everything that's happened in the Premier League. So what we've just been discussing then, top 4, the title, absolutely everything. So it'd probably be a long one, I imagine, because we'll have a lot of stuff to discuss. I'll see you after the game, Shreyas. And hopefully we'll be celebrating Europa League.
Let's just keep it.
I couldn't say that I'm in a straight face.
I think we've been through enough this season.
Yeah, it's true.
This last game, let's just keep it in the air.
Yeah, we've had so many depressing moments, haven't we? So United will probably deliver us another one. As we know. Good. We're all good to go. Let's see how this game pans out, and we'll see you at full time, guys. Take it easy. Peace.